Have you ever told yourself you're going to change, only to fall back into the same patterns you've been stuck in weeks, maybe even days later? You know what to do. You've read the books, you're listening to the podcast, so why don't your actions line up with your desires? Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton, and I help high achievers just like you who feel stuck bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Traditional self help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick for good so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. Today's conversation is one that might fundamentally shift how you think about change. And that's why I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation with Diane McDowell. Diane is a therapist turned coach and a leading expert in emotional safety. And she's here today to answer the question, what if the reason you can't stick to the plan has nothing to do with your willpower? And if that's true, what do you really need to start making change stick? Diane is a psychotherapist and nervous system expert who specializes in trauma-informed healing and helping people regulate their physiology so real change becomes possible. In our conversation, Diane breaks down why motivation disappears the moment your nervous system detects threat, the subtle difference between stress and trauma, and why that distinction matters so much, how high achievers can unknowingly live in a chronic fight or flight loop, and one powerful reframe that will shift you from what's wrong with me to something much more useful. This episode goes deeper than surface level habits. It challenges the idea that change is purely mental and introduces a biological lens that may explain to you years of frustration in just a few minutes. If you've ever felt like you're fighting yourself, trust me, you're not alone. And this conversation might finally explain why. With that, please enjoy Diane McDowell. What does it mean to you to be self-aware?
Self-aware is learning how to see on the inside what's happening without responding to it, without it's leading it instead of it letting it lead you.
Okay, I love that answer. The reason I started with that is because I think that one, that is a term or a phrase, I don't even know what you call it, that gets thrown around a lot, right? Self-awareness is key. We have to be aware of ourselves. And I use the phrase knowledge of self often on this podcast. I speak of it as a meta skill. I think that when you have that, everything else becomes easier. And when you don't, everything else becomes harder. And yet, as much as it's talked about, it can be hard to pinpoint exactly what does that mean and also how do we work towards it. So if I'm someone who has heard a lot about this in the past or have understand like, okay, this sounds like something that would be net beneficial for me, how do we start to cultivate this in ourselves?
So what I suggest people do is do check-ins with themselves. So you start noticing, how do I feel and what is the thought that's triggering that? A lot of times we are motivated by things we're not aware of, so or we don't like about ourselves. So starting to be self-aware, we have to start noticing, oh, there's this part of me that's jealous and I don't really like it, and so I need to be aware of it and kind of lean into it. Or there's a part of me that gets angry easily and I need to just be aware of it and build a relationship with that part of me.
Yeah. So again, we're speaking the same language. I always say awareness is the first step to change. I teach change in three steps that I call the change loop. It's awareness, education, action. The first step is awareness because you can't change what you don't know exists. And you mentioned your emotions and your feelings, but this is something that I'm learning myself recently in therapy is that I don't really know what I feel. I even have right now, you can see if you're looking, my phone background is a feelings wheel, right? So it's
Yeah.
like I put it there because I'm like, I know that I don't know what I feel. When I talk to my partner or I talk to my therapist and they go, how are you feeling about this? I just go like, I don't know. It's hard for me to put a name to a feeling or to really connect what is going on in my brain or in my body. So a two-sided question to this is, in your experience, why are we so disconnected from this? And how do we start to understand or put names and labels to these things? Because how can I be aware of something if I don't even know what to call it?
And that is such a good question because so many people struggle with feeling. Like, what is a feeling? So, what I teach people is start simple. So, starting to notice, does my body feel heavy or light? Does it feel open or closed? Does it feel dark or light? So, just starting, don't even name it yet. Just start to notice, what does my body feel? One of the things that I teach people is a sentence in our head is a thought. That's a thought we have as a sentence. That's how our brain communicates. We love to stay in our brain, but we actually need to get into our body, and that is where our feelings are. So, most of us will have a feeling and we don't even realize it. And we go to our head and we analyze it and we think about it and we justify it and we try to get rid of it. And what I teach people is to start learning just to stay with the sensation in your body. You don't have to name it anger or name it anything at first. It's just starting to go, oh wow, I have this sick pit of the stomach, or I have two jabbing things in my chest and they're pulling my chest together. And oh, I just feel a sinking, falling feeling. And so you don't need to label it right away. Just get familiar with it.
Yeah, that's really good. And you can see as you're saying that, if you're watching on video, but for those of you listening, I'm kind of like, ooh, like grimacing, because my first intention, and again, I'm using my own personal experience very in real time because I'm really going through this over these last few months. This is something I'm really trying to work on. Is that is my first instant action, is to go straight to logic and go, here, this is how I'm feeling. How can I name this? Okay, what does that mean? And sitting with it in my body and not being able to put a name to it, or just letting that stay there,
Mm-hmm.
is very challenging and the uncomfortable thing for me. And as you're speaking, it's like, well, yeah, that probably is what I need to do more of. And it is something that I'm practicing. But it brings me to something that I've heard you speak on in the past. And I would love to understand, because it's really the topic of this entire podcast, right? Change made easy. My whole thing is, how do we make whatever change you're trying to make? I think of the three pillars of life: health, wealth, and relationships, or your behaviors, your actions, and your routines. And how do we make that easy? But the question that comes up in this podcast and just in life in general is, why do we not stick to the changes that we implement when we really do want them? It's one thing when, say, I want to quit smoking and we know that it's good for us, but like, I really don't want to quit smoking. It's just my partner keeps yelling at me. My doctor told me I had to. It's like, I can understand why we don't stick with that in the long term. But when it's something that I say I really do want, I really do want to have better control over my finances and stick to a budget so that I could go on vacation later this year. Why do we find it so hard to stick to these things when they are in our own best interest?
So, for so many people, what happens is we want something. And that's where you're talking about, I want to quit smoking, or I want to work out, but I don't really want it. But you're actually saying, when I really do want this thing, what happens that I don't stick to it? And what I think, and I think that the statistics say like 50% of what we do in a day is habitual. I think it's way higher than that. I think the majority of what we do is habitual. And so we have to be very in line, or self aware, if you want to call it that, when our brain wants to go, oh, I want to eat this food. And our future self has already said, no, I don't want to do that. So I use the example of like our prefrontal brain, our wise brain that's interested in our future self, is what makes the decisions ahead of time for us. But our reptile brain on our brainstem, that's in instant gratification, overrides that. And so we had to be prepared to be looking for, oh, my reptile's brain is going to want to override me when the time comes to stick to this decision. And here are the things I'm going to do to prevent that or to work with that. So anticipating that our reptile brain is stronger in the moment than our prefrontal, and we are going to want to give into it. And so knowing what you need to do to prevent that.
Yeah, so good. Planning ahead for the obstacles that are inevitable is a big piece of what I work with clients to do. It's, how can we forecast out ahead the challenges that we tend to know will happen, because we tend to fall into the same patterns. We tend to do the same things and then make the same mistakes. Often, when I work with people for things like weight loss or fitness or things like that, people will come to me and they'll go, well, I'm good until this happens. Oh, I'm so good on my diet until X, Y, and Z happens. Or I always start working out and then I work out for a month or two and then this happens and then I stop. And it's like, well, then we know what the issue is. You've already told me. Now, how do we break out of that pattern? So, how do you help people to start to recognize the patterns that they're in so that they can plan for those maybe inevitable stumbling stones and roadblocks?
One of the things I do is I teach people about the little quits. We do little quits on ourselves. And when we start doing little quits, they become big quits. So it's like if I said I'm going to work out 5 days this week and then I skip a day of those 5 days, that is a little quit. But it will lead to a big quit if I continue to do it again. And so, really starting to catch ourselves on those little quits to make sure that is really our prefrontal decision. Um, the other thing I tell people is it's kind of the 10-minute rule. Like, do it for 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And if you really can't get into it, if you really feel like this isn't working for you right now, then give yourself permission to quit. But it's really about training your brain to see yourself in a certain way. I am a person who works out. I also have people do 3x5 cards and put like a clippy on it. So, and write positive present tense statements. As a person who values my health, I work out 5 times a day. And you practice that 5 times a day when you wake up, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and when you go to bed to start taking on that identity. And so if you don't feel like working out, you actually work out for 2 or 3 minutes just to keep that identity. It's not because you're going to benefit from working out for 3 minutes. It's you're stepping into the person who does that.
Yeah, so true. So powerful. Identity is such a powerful piece in all of this. You said something a few minutes ago that I wanted to touch on again because it's just sticking with me as you're talking. And it's that you said we often want to rather than just actually want to do something.
Yeah.
Could you expand on what exactly you mean by that and how we can maybe delineate between the two?
Yeah. So if I want to, I'm going to use me with pop. I used to drink Diet Dr. Pepper and I wanted to give it up. I wanted to not want it. But the problem was I still wanted it. And so I was trying to convince myself that I wanted to be someone who didn't drink pop. And the identity I had of myself was somebody who doesn't drink pop. But I didn't want it. I wanted to want it. And until I could actually want it, I wasn't willing to put the work in to change my behavior. So when we want to want something, we wish we wanted it, but we actually don't want it enough to do the work for it. So we have to start practicing getting into the person who actually is willing to do the work to accomplish that thing, to be uncomfortable.
So I guess my question is, though, where does that wish come from, right? And that, to use your example, you're like, I didn't really want to give it up, but I wanted to be the person who wanted to give it up. It's like, where does that come from? That desire that isn't really ours.
Aligning with that identity. So aligning with the person who actually, and so what I actually teach people to do is write a letter to their future self who's already done that thing. And so asking her, how did she do it? What did she do? And building that relationship with the person who's already accomplished that. And then you start to become that person as you build that relationship. As you talk to her, what is she wearing? What does she drink instead? Like, does she have pop in the house if she doesn't drink pop? No. Like, so you build a relationship with that person who's already accomplished it. And then you start stepping into that identity more and more often.
Yeah, such a good tool, writing the letter to yourself. And this is something I just ask my clients as well. It's about a habit they're trying to change or something that they're trying to build. Is just like, well, what would that look like if you were doing it? If you were going to the gym X many times a week, if you were saving money, if you were having those hard conversations with your spouse, what would that look like? How much time would you need to put aside? How much, and break it down into its tangible action steps. And that goes back to what you were saying before about those little pieces that add up to the bigger thing. On their own, none of those pieces make the thing, but suddenly, all together, they are the change that you want to be. So I love that you're breaking this down into these little action steps that are very tangible for people. And then I can see, though, on the other side of that, we want it, we actually want it, or we want to want it. we know the actions that we need to take. And just, using my example before, we get stuck in the same patterns. And often those patterns that we get stuck in, probably more often than not, probably 9 out of 10 times, if I'm using my own estimates, those patterns are our own patterns and what many would call self-sabotage. I'm the one stopping me. You're the one stopping you. No one is coming into your house, stocking the fridge with Diet Dr. Pepper and then cracking a can and putting it in your hand. So even though you want the thing, you're actively taking actions and taking steps against the thing. Every time you're saying, I don't want to be a person who drinks pop, and yet you go to the grocery store, you come back with a 12-pack and you put it in the fridge, those actions are counter to each other. And something that I've heard you speak about in the past is that self-sabotage in many regards is actually a safety mechanism. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. So it's really our nervous system keeping us safe. And so a lot of times people will be like, I keep sabotaging my relationships or I keep sabotaging myself. And here's the thing. I use the analogy it's like a dog. If somebody comes to our door, our dog barks. I have a lab. She barks. She's not malicious. She's not dangerous. She's not going to hurt anybody. She's doing what she does to keep her family safe. That's the same thing our brain does. It's not sabotaging us. It's not trying to ruin us. It's keeping us safe by doing the same thing over and over. Familiarity, comfort. It's just doing its job. So instead of being like my brain keeps sabotaging us, what happens is we create this tug of war with it. We're like back and forth and we get into this tug of war. What I want to suggest is we drop the rope and there's no tug of war and we're just like my brain's doing what it needs to do to keep me safe. It thinks it's keeping me safe by keeping me drinking Dr. Pepper or keeping me out of the gym because that's what it's familiar. It loves routine and comfort and familiarity. So I try to get out of the it's sabotaging us mentality and it's doing its job. And I have to learn how to work with it, to befriend it, to help it want to help me.
Yeah, such a powerful reframe. And I agree on everything that you just pointed out. And for some reason, I think that it just feels different because self-sabotage feels, again, adversarial, as you said, right? You're
Yes.
against yourself. You're against your brain. Oh, why do I keep doing this to myself? Oh my God. And then we get into that negative self-talk of I'm less than, I am so dumb, I can't figure this out, all these other things that pop into our head. And when you realize that it's just your brain and your body doing what it feels at some low subconscious, like you said, lizard brain level is going to be the thing that protects you, it can feel like a little bit of a weight is lifted or a little bit of a lighter load to carry. So what's then the next step? Because even though I can accept that, I still want to change the habit. I still want to change what the actual action is. And now, how do I go a step further and start to make that change stick?
Okay. I am a big fan of visualization. If you think about in sports and in most things in life that we're like planning a meeting, we visualize what we're going to say in a big boardroom meeting. We have an outline. It's the same thing when we're making a change in our nervous system. We visualize. How does it feel in my nervous system when I've done this? What do I think? What do I say? And we literally, there's so many studies about visualization and there's a study specifically about like people who actually play piano and people who imagine playing piano and weightlifting. And you get the same skill when you imagine it versus actually doing it. And so your brain doesn't know the difference between you actually going to the gym and working out and you imagining and picturing and building a relationship with being the person who goes to the gym and working out. So really spending time imagining, and I really recommend when you're going to sleep and waking up. Our brain is very pliable then. We're going from alpha to beta and beta to alpha, and our brain can be very easily influenced with imagery. There's also techniques of going bilateral eye movement and creating an image. So it actually creates and solidifies an image inside us. It over a time it reconsolidates an image in our brain. So I really suggest people start spending time visualizing, thinking, imagining, talking to the person who did it, and you start creating that relationship with yourself as if you've already done that change. A lot of times we want to take action first instead of building that relationship with the person who's going to take the action.
Yeah, and as you said, visualization has been proven time and time again. And I think it's important to note that I do consider that taking action, right? I think this is where a lot of people get tripped up, where they're like, I need to take action. I need to start doing the thing. But I think taking action is doing a thing, doing anything that will
Yeah.
help you in the pursuit of that goal. So it's like people who, using your example of wanting to go to the gym more, it's like, I need to get to the gym. But that might be too big of a step right out of the gate. So simply researching, what am I going to do once I get to the gym? Or finding a gym that is close to you, that has a community vibe that you go to, that you're not going to go to and get icked out and want to turn around right as soon as you get there. Or finding comfy socks and comfy shoes that encourage you to actually want to do the workout, while not being the ultimate end goal action of doing the workout. They are actions in the service of that thing.
Yes.
And I think that giving yourself a little bit of grace in that regard. And also, just interestingly, you mentioned that, studies about visualization and it helping people adopt that identity of like, I am the type of person who even lifts weights. And interestingly, in those studies, they actually find that even physically, those people get stronger. Somehow visualizing yourself lifting weights will help increase your strength in the short term. Obviously, it's not going to be the same as lifting a ton of weights, but you do get some type of, because a lot of the changes in our body are neurological. They come from the better connections of being able to better lift a weight because I practice it. So practicing it in our mind helps our body in the meantime when that thing isn't actually happening. So all of this is attainable and actionable right out of the gate. And I think that's why it's so powerful. It's like you said, right before bed or right when you wake up in the morning. These are things that you can do that are low cost, low barrier to entry, and yet have, I think, an outsized return on investment on what you're going to do because they're free and they don't
Yeah.
cost anything
Yeah.
or do anything.
All
So I
it
love
takes
these.
is time
Right.
and brain juice. But
Right.
I want to add too that a lot of times when people try to make change, they try to make change from a negative place. And you can't take negative energy and take a positive action and get positive. You're going to get negative. So if you go to the gym hating your body and hating going to the gym, you're creating more negative energy.
Yeah, such a good point. I use the phrase I use is like, are you running away from or running towards? Am I
Yes.
running away from the person that I don't want to be, or am I running towards the person that I do want to be? While theoretically you're running the same distance, it's a very different energy. And one of them, running away from energy, is it burns like rocket fuel. So rocket fuel, it lights very fast and it explodes and pushes it up into the atmosphere, but then those rockets fall off. They burn out just as quickly as they started. Whereas the running towards energy is like a campfire. It will burn out unless you keep feeding it. And as long as you keep feeding it, it can keep running
Uh-huh.
forever. And that's the type of energy that we want to work with. Ideally, it's it's in psychology circles, it's intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. These
Yeah.
are pretty common terms at this point. So when you're working with people, or maybe in your own life, when they have that, I want to want this thing, right? That's usually maybe that running from energy or that extrinsic motivation. It's because I've been told that this is good for me, or I know that I'm supposed to, I should, all these words that we know aren't quite helpful come up. How can I help to start to shift towards that positive energy and find that internal drive that's actually going to get me to sustain this in the long term?
And I would say it's going back to that future self, building that relationship with the future self that's like, wow, what does it feel like when you've done it? How does she or he feel? How does she show up in life? How is she talking to people? Like, what does it feel like to accomplish that? And you're building that, not just, I want to. One of the things that Rick Hansen talks about is when we talk about, I want to be the person, we actually separate ourselves. It's somebody out there, but we take ownership. I am when we start stepping into that identity. So making sure your thoughts aren't, I want to want this, but actually start being, as the person who wants this, this is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And start catching your words when you're talking about wanting to want it. And you may not say, I want to want it, but that type of thinking, and catch that thinking and correct it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Words are so important, and my listeners know I talk about the power of words. I'm very specific about the words that I choose, and catching people in certain words. And that's the word want in itself is inherently a word of lack, because you can only want something that you do not have. So
Yeah.
therefore, every time you're saying I want blank, you're saying I do not have blank, which can be seen to reinforce that lack. So shifting to focusing rather on the person in the future who does have that, who embodies that, can feel much more empowering, because our brain, I think this is just my own thinking around this stuff, will only see something that we lack so many times before it gives up on having it. This is the person
Mm.
who has tried going to the gym. I tried going to the gym. It doesn't work for me. It's like, what does that mean? Well, it's like, well, I went and then I stopped and then I went and then I stopped and then I went and then I stopped and then I just said, this isn't working. Or I've tried every diet and it just, none of them work for me. It's like, because you can only keep trying something without getting a result so much before your brain goes, well, this is dumb. Why am I going to keep wasting energy on this? And that will always eventually happen, which is why feeding ourselves those wins, those micro wins, or visualizing that future where it has happened, can kind of short circuit that and give your brain the solution that it so desperately wants, which then paradoxically allows you to keep taking the action, to keep doing the thing so that you get the result in real time. But all of this, everything we've talked about up until this point, from self-sabotage to awareness and emotions, all of these things, it's kind of can feel like it's us against our brains. Like I have this
Mm.
conscious awareness of what I theoretically want, or what I want to want, or what society tells me I want. And yet all of that isn't happening, only because of my subconscious, my brain, my lizard brain, my monkey brain, whatever, some piece of me that I somehow can't control. And I've heard you talk about, or a phrase that I love, which is the brain hijack. So, can you explain what you mean by that and how we can start to take back control in this area?
Yeah. So the brain hijack is when our brain, and it's not our prefrontal, we're talking about our reptile, our flight, freeze, keep us safe. So our brain has a reflex to keep us safe. And what will happen is our brain will see somebody we love as dangerous because of something they said or something we perceive they said. And so what will happen is we get hijacked, and what will often happen is all the tools, and this is what I started seeing in myself. I'm a therapist. I've been for 25 plus 5 years. And back years ago, I would find that I knew all the skills. I was teaching other people. And I actually started finding I felt like a hypocrite because I was teaching other people, but I couldn't use them. And what I started learning was that my brain would get hijacked, and all the skills that I had been taught were offline. I didn't have access to them because my brain was like, danger, danger. And I couldn't do all the things I knew I needed to do. And so I started looking at this brain hijack and going, what do I need to do when my brain is hijacked? And how do I need to stop getting hijacked or unhijack once I get hijacked? And so this is the process of the brain hijack and learning how to basically skills to start to get grounded in our body. So it's the idea of it's a place I can watch without getting sucked in. I can notice the thoughts and notice what's happening without getting sucked into the space of obeying it or doing what my brain is telling me. And I want to go back to what you said. I don't ever want to give the perception that we're fighting our brain. Our brain is an asset. I teach people to name their brain, and a lot of people want to name it something negative. I'm like, no, it's your friend. You want to name it and befriend it and talk to it and build a relationship with that part of your brain. But we don't want to fight our brain because we won't win.
Oh yeah, totally. It's exactly we were just talking about before, the power of words. If if running away from something is a negative that's not going to let me get there, fighting my brain is never going to be a negative or a positive result for us. So, but it can just feel like that. It can feel like, again, every time we try to do something, if I'm honest with myself, the only thing that stops me from doing something is me. And if I come to that conclusion, again, I can kick and scream and I can blame, and work is like this and my partner's like this and my kids are like that and the economy is doing this and this is, like, but if I really want to be honest with myself, it's like, oh man, like if I keep peeling back the layers, keep peeling back the onion, the one thing that's at the root of all of this stuff is me. And that's a very uncomfortable place to be. So it can just feel like that, although it is not factually true.
Yeah. But here's the thing is that's where we get our power. When we own it's me, we get our power. When we're busy blaming, outsourcing to everything and everybody else, we don't have power to change it. But when we take ownership, and so a lot of times I'll actually tell people, I know it might sound harsh, but when you take all the ownership and assume it's always on you, then you get the power to do something with it. When you're busy blaming someone else, you feel helpless and hopeless.
Yeah, so true. It's the two, in my opinion, most empowering statements. The hardest things to sit with are that it's all my fault and nobody cares. And 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 I say those things to people, and it can seem harsh and be like, "What do you mean nobody cares about you? What do you mean nobody cares about you? Me? What do you mean it's all my fault?" It's like, yeah, but like those are the most empowering statements, because it means if it's all my fault, it means I can control it and I can change it. And if nobody cares, it means no one's judging me, no one's watching me, and I'm free to try anything that I need to do, and I'm free to act as I see necessary or as I see fit and live my own life by my own means and get out of all of this stuff. And I just want to go back for a second and just say I appreciate that you shared how much of this has come from your own personal journey. And I love that when someone like you is, like you said, therapist over 2 decades, a coach, someone who's helping people to figure out their stuff, is being open and honest with how much you have struggled with your own stuff. Because I think it's easy to think about or assume that everyone else has all of this stuff handled. Diane, she's been doing this for so long, it must be so easy for her. Paul has coached so many people, he must understand this stuff. It's like I just said, the reason I made the background of my phone the feelings wheel is because I sat with my therapist on like their second or third meeting, and he goes, well, there's a tool that I would like to introduce to you. It's called the feelings wheel. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know that. I give it to my clients all the time, but I never use it. It's like, that's for them. Like that wouldn't be. Why would I use such a thing? Like I'm so enlightened, but it's not. And I think it's hard or scary to admit, but I think it gives the people listening, it gives me a little bit more hope to realize that no one has this all figured out, and we're all kind of going through the muck and the mess together. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah. I thank you. I appreciate that, because sometimes I'm like, do I share? But honestly, as someone in the helping field, we have to look at our own self, and it's easy to be like giving advice, but it takes a lot of work to be like, wait, am I doing that? I had years ago where I was working with someone on working out, and I was like, I haven't worked out in months. And I got out running right away because I was like, I feel yucky working with someone else in an area I am looking like I have my stuff together and I don't. So I want to go back to something we were talking about
Go
earlier,
ahead.
just real quick, because when you were talking, a thought came in. And when you were talking about like making change and how to make change, one of the things I find so helpful is a thought ladder. And basically, the idea is if I hate my body, if I look in the mirror and I'm like, I love myself, I love my body, it doesn't change anything because I don't believe it. So we have a cognitive dissonance when we think one way and we want to think another way. And so we can't say, I love my positive affirmations don't work if we're just saying them and they don't change our feeling. They don't change the sensations in our body, which will lead to the nervous system change. So we have to create a way to make it believable. And so what I teach my clients is it has to be believable and it has to feel somewhat true to change us. So you can't go from I hate my body to I love my body. So I teach like I have a body. I have a body with working parts. There are things I like about my body. So each time you practice a new thought, you take yourself a step closer. First, you go to neutral, and then you go a step closer to the goal thought that you want to think.
I'm so glad that you brought that back up and that you shared that, because that's the number one pushback I get for myself, even when people talk about affirmations and mantras and positive self imagery and all these things, is just being like, yeah, but isn't that lying to myself? Like if I don't really believe that, how am I just going to say something over and over? I am rich. I am this. So I love that ladder of progression where it doesn't have to jump from A all the way to Z. It's the same thing that we've been talking about, those small incremental steps over time will get you there. So I love that as a tool. I've never heard that one, but the thought ladder is a really powerful one. The last two questions I have for you, Diane, are the same questions that I ask all my guests. The first is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
Oh, for people to learn to be compassionate and kind to themselves, not even to other people, because once we can be compassionate and kind to ourselves, it is so much easier to be compassionate and kind to everybody else.
Yeah, I would think even a step further, it would be automatic. I think that
Right.
if we get compassionate and kind with ourselves, the next natural progression is we start to be nicer to other people. And a lot of on the flip side of that coin, a lot of the negative feelings that we feel towards others are actually negative feelings imposed on ourselves. So I love that. I think that the world would be a much softer, more beautiful place. And finally, if you had one action step that listeners could take right now, today, as soon as this episode ends, as soon as they take their headphones out, to start making any change in their life just a little bit easier, it could be something you already named or a new tool, what action can they take?
I would say watch your thoughts. We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. We have no idea what's happening in the back of our brain and how it's influencing our mood. And so just to start shining the light on your thoughts so that you're aware of them.
Before you go, I just have to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed or got value from this episode at all, then take a moment and leave a rating and review in the podcast app that you're listening or watching on. If you like the show and you want me to continue to create more episodes and be able to get awesome guests that will help make changing your life easier, then this is the best way you can show support. You can leave a 5-star review on iTunes like Eliza K, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Thank you, Eliza. Or you can be like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen." Thank you, Dalton. And thank you to all of the over 100 people who have taken the time to rate and review this show 5 stars on iTunes, or the dozens who have left 5-star reviews on Spotify. It only takes a minute, and it helps me grow, it helps me reach a new audience, and it lets me know that this is helping someone, which just feels good. All you have to do is go to the show page of whatever app you're listening to and hit the little 5 stars. Or go to the comments section on YouTube and boom, that's it. And if you really want to show love, take a screenshot when you do it and tag me in your stories on social media at Change Made Easy, and I'll shout you out in an upcoming episode. All right, go leave that rating, and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday with new episodes of Change Made Easy.